Gentlemen, are you ready?
We're waiting for our charts to be flipped by
Oh,
Liz Vanna White here, so.
You've got a future in that.
But we'll get up. We'll get up. That's part of our stretching and movement.
Mr. Chairman, members of the CAB, my name is Pete Maggiore, and I'm the Assistant Manager for Environmental Programs at Los Alamos. And I wanted to thank you for hosting us in this committee meeting this afternoon. I'm going to turn it over to Jeff here in about 10 seconds, but I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the members of the CAB for allowing us to be here today and to present a possible approach to getting some public involvement and some recommendations from the CAB with regard to future campaign activities and environmental cleanup. This is a pretty exciting, I think, opportunity for the CAB to host and to assist with, and I just wanted to thank everybody for that opportunity. It's all yours, Jeff.
Okay. What we're here to talk about today is just a little bit of a carry-on from the discussion that we had at the meeting a couple weeks ago, where we were looking at an input process to our campaign approach. And so I wanted to give just a little more detail on that today, and then really talk to you about how we want to do that, how we want to collect input from the advisory board. So Mr. Chairman, members of the CAB, I appreciate the time today, and we'll walk through this. So next slide, please. Oops, I'm the turner. Maybe. So kind of what we've done is based upon the campaign philosophy that we've used with the 3706 campaign, is we've looked at the entire population of work that we have to do at the laboratory across all of the areas, and divided those into really 17 cleanup campaigns across 5 different categories. And the purpose of doing that is like we talked about before, is that we're better able to focus resources on the higher risk activities, to complete work, as opposed to spreading resources across everything and not getting the completions or the results on any single thing that we're looking at. And I think a good example of that is what we've done on the 3706 campaign, although it has taken resources and some sacrifices certainly to other work. It has gotten rid of now one of the most significant risks that we've had at the laboratory, and that's the waste that would be combustible or dispersible in the event of a fire, and got the majority of that waste right now off the mesa at Area G. So what we're looking for as we kind of roll out this campaign approach, and the reason we're doing this is because we're restructuring or rewriting or revising our life cycle baseline, is to seek input from the Citizens Advisory Board on priorities of the work and things like that. So what we're looking at, so let me walk through these campaigns. So the first one is under transuranic waste and what's really included under the framework agreement. So there's a couple here, the FY12, FY13 new gen waste, and so we're just finishing that up. We've been working that the last really 2.5 years to make sure we don't haven't accumulated an inventory of that waste while we've been focusing on the 3706. We've got the remaining above grade legacy waste, so we've got roughly 600 to 700 cubic meters of waste that's non-combustible, things like cemented liquids that we still have stored above grade that we'll have to disposition. That'll be going to WIP. Then we've got retrievals, the CMP disposition, those are the corrugated metal pipes, trenches A through D and pit 9, and the hot cell liners, the tritium tank, and what we call the 17th canister. So that would make up what we call the retrievals campaign, and I've tried to list those out kind of under the subheadings of the work, and then the 33 shafts. So that would make up really the transuranic waste. The next one is also within the framework agreement, but is water protection. And so under that, we've talked several times about the chromium groundwater cleanup with the chromium plume. The RDX groundwater cleanup in our technical area 16, which is explosives contamination. Then the boundary protection, which is kind of a further campaign of the weirs, the sediment traps and controls that we put in place to try to keep as many of the sediments on laboratory property as we can. A good example of that is the big weir system up at really the confluence of Pueblo and Los Alamos canyons as you go up to White Rock. The next one is some key, what we call bias for action. We've talked to the state a little bit about these, but there's some things that we can take that would make a significant difference within areas. So MDAL, soil vapor extraction to start addressing the VOCs, and then the general's tanks removals at TA21. And then we have several other site cleanups under that, so we describe that as a campaign. The next category are the MDA remedies, so these are the closures or the waste extractions from the material disposal areas, so we list the material disposal areas there. And then the last one is aggregate areas, or these wider ranging areas that we have multiple small sites within, and TA21, so really completing those aggregate areas, things like town sites, and then TA21, kind of final remedy and getting that completed. So that's kind of a quick summary in a nutshell of the campaigns that we've currently got listed out. So what we're proposing is at the May 21st meeting of the CAB that we implement a process to collect input from the Citizens Advisory Board, and we have all the members participate. So a couple things I brought today. This is just a poster of what I just told you of the campaigns that we propose going forward. And this is a poster and for one of the campaigns. So this one is made for the chromium groundwater cleanup. And really what it would be is if we put the posters around the room, we do a briefing on each of the campaigns, more detailed than I'm talking about here. Yes, sir, Carlos.
Jeff, are any of these campaigns, are these campaigns in ranked order now?
No, they're not.
Okay.
No, they're not. Yeah, so internally we went through a review process on prioritization, but I haven't delivered them that way to you.
Okay.
So in the how we do that, so then I'd have a subject matter expert here with each poster that could explain what we're doing, what the problem. So I go through really what the problem is in terms of an issue statement, what the solution is, or multiple solutions if we haven't reached a CME, or if a CME is involved, what the status of the project is, what the opportunity for the cleanup is, prerequisites, so if some work has to be done prior to doing that, what the approximate duration of the campaign would be, what the cost range and the resource summary for the campaign is. So that's things like that. That may be a range because we haven't selected final remedy yet, and it may require special resources, so I wanted to make sure that we included that. And then kind of how we define success on that campaign. And so we'd have a similar poster made up like this one for each of the campaigns.
Could I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
I noticed you didn't have anything about for chromium 3, chromium 6, and chromium 3.
Right, so that would just be, that would be within the solution approach on the chromium campaign, on the chromium cleanup campaign.
Okay, I just didn't see it, I can't read that.
Right, so this one, it doesn't go into finite detail, but that's why I would have my a technical expert present it, and then somebody here that can answer any questions as you guys were going through and trying to understand each of the ones.
Jeff, just a question. Back on the original, like the fourth one, 33 shafts, you're gonna give us a separate campaign discussion
Right,
on the 33?
on the 33 shafts, because that's broken apart, because we're still doing the NEPA on that, so I didn't want to include it with all of the other retrieval work at this time, so I've kept it separate.
Very fine.
So what we were proposing, so that's kind of the methodology of this. And then we asked, you know, what would be a way you could score this, or what am I looking for, without giving you 52 criteria and asking you for a 1 to 10 score on each one, or things like that. So what I was proposing, and this is totally open to discussion on what you guys might want to do, but I'd be interested from the CAB on each of the campaigns, whether you see that as a low priority, a medium priority, or a high priority. And then I would be interested in the top 5 or 6 or 7 campaigns, because it really is kind of the near term we'd line those up of what the CAB sees in that priority order. So what we've got in the score sheet when you come up to look at it is for each of the campaigns, kind of a low, medium, high, and then a listing of the top 5 priorities for the LANL cleanup. So how I envision this working is maybe each of the CAB members fills out their evaluation sheet. And then, as it kind of leads here, the ballots are given to the staff, so that's what we would do. After that meeting, the staff would basically tally the ballots. They could discuss, you know, the results of that and the consolidation at that in your June meeting, and then provide us almost as a recommendation would be a good way to do it from the Citizens Advisory Board, but recommendation on the priorities, and then probably a listing of where you see all the campaigns in that high, medium, low prioritization. So that's one way that we came up with being able to do this. I'm open to other ways. Again, my objective is really to collect input. And I know this has probably been done before, but it hasn't been done recently. And I think as we're getting ready to put together a life cycle baseline, I think it's appropriate that we go through this type of process. So I think I have one more slide here. One thing that we'll have a presentation, a briefing on, but we've got, excuse me? Oh, Alex.
Actually, it relates to this slide. At the last meeting, I asked you, could you explain to us how these campaigns would tie into the consent order framework? And you said they would tie into it, and that you could explain that to us at a future meeting.
Yep. So the majority of work, with maybe the exception of the radioactive only. So in the consent order, it is in the framework agreement, but in the consent order, we don't have work for the specific transuranic waste. We have work for closure of Area G, which you have to take care of the waste before you could close the site. Is in there, but as you go through the consent order today, we'll look at some way to crosswalk that work so you can see how that lines up.
Would it be your intent to carry this over into the renegotiation of the consent order?
I think this is the meat on the bone. So I think
The answer is yes.
What's that?
The answer is yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
I think as you, and that's one thing we've, as we get ready for any consent order negotiations, that we make absolutely sure that the work that's laid out in the consent order today is crosswalked into the consent order that will be in place tomorrow or the next day. And so we may group work a little bit differently under a campaign approach, but there's going to be a very detailed crosswalk that shows where everything we had in the consent order today, where it parked itself into in the new consent order.
And could you provide that to us by our June meeting?
I don't know, because we haven't really started a ton of work on the consent order yet. But I think with the campaigns, yeah, I'll make a commitment. We'll do that. We'll do that.
Jeff, in addition, if I might, there's also several environmental permits that the laboratory holds that we're committed to collecting quarterly monitoring samples, things like that, many of which are administered by the New Mexico Environment Department, but not all of those. For example, we have the IP permit with EPA. So that work needs to continue as kind of a baseline level of work independent of this. So that will cause kind of some dollars to be taken off the top each year so that the annual budget doesn't get completely tied up with these campaigns per se, but there's some ongoing regulatory compliance work that we just have to do to be compliant with our permits and stay in business. So I think that was a
Which is
point.
that bullet right there. So we'll probably, as we brief this out, we'll probably brief the kind of the baseline, the monitoring work that's not within any campaigns that has to continue on as a basically.
And I think that kind of ties in, or relates to the question that you asked, Alex. So,
Question? Two questions, actually. One, will these posters include any information on cost at all?
So-
Something might cost 200 million or something might cost 8 million, and that might have some bearing on
Yes.
its feasibility.
So what I've tried to do on this one, I've just represented it with dollar signs. So it's like if you're looking at a restaurant and on the web to go eat, you see those $4 signs, it's like, oh. So we're going to do something like that, but we'll have as much cost information as we have on the project to date by that SME. So
Okay, and my other question was, were you to finish all 17 of these campaigns, where would you be relative to meeting the consent order?
we'd be complete. That would be the objective.
just if I might just underscore something that Jeff said earlier, this would be a really important exercise because, as Jeff said, he's in the process of trying to build his life cycle baseline. And when I made a presentation to the Regional Coalition of LANL Communities in Taos, one of the commissioners there asked me point blank, how much is it going to cost and how long is it going to take to achieve the legacy cleanup? And that really gets answered to a good extent with this life cycle baseline that Jeff's putting together, but it depends in part on how all these campaigns get racked and stacked and things like that. So there's actually a process that we're going through where I see a convergence of a whole lot of really important things happening in the next 6 to 12 months, and this is certainly a big part of that.
And then I think the last thing on this, we're still working to the framework agreement requirements are still due, so those are high on the agenda. So we'll indicate things within the campaigns that tie to the framework agreement. And then some campaigns are field ready to go, and some campaigns have prerequisites. A good example may be at TA 21. You can't really rush into closure until you have your MDA AB and MDAT completions done. So just a couple things there. So we will work to identify the readiness of the campaign, what the prerequisites are, if any predecessor activities need completed first. Yes, sir.
Well, for instance, and of course I'm interested in 33 shafts. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And it makes a big difference whether we have availability of hot cells. And how is that? We can't just say, well, we'll do this in a hot cell. We don't know that. We don't know that we can get access to the hot cells. So that brings a whole new perspective. Then we've got to look at, okay, we make our own hot cells. And so these decisions make a big difference on how we approach the final solution and the cost.
Right. So like on the, I guess on the the 33 shafts as we've looked at. If you did go in and retrieve that waste to disposition, I think we've got a pathway through CMR that has a modification or addition to CMR to be able to process some of the things that we'd be getting here. So I guess our discussions up here would be on the best information or the best plan that we know to date, Bob, and then they just explain what that process or what that plan today is. And that could, you're exactly right, that could, based on getting in and getting detailed characterization data off that plan could change down the road.
Because we approached DOE about the 33 shafts, doing them in the hot cells, and they said, don't do it. The hot cells are not available to you. So
we'll be able to clarify that for sure, but it was my understanding that CMR and the modification on CMR was the path forward on this stuff, so. Alex?
My understanding, I'm looking at your water slide there, and it talks about, contain chromium plume at laboratory boundary, remediate can't read that last one, but the source in place, or source. This doesn't tie us into any specific corrective measure. You would still go through the process of a
Right.
corrective measures evaluation?
That's correct. Yeah, yes, sir. So what we would do is we would give you, at least as far as we've gone with the state today on what the interim measures are, and then our best estimate on what we'd do going forward. But again, that's not codified in the CME to go to CMI yet. So.
Yeah, and that's a really important point, Alex. Thanks for bringing that up, because some of these, Jeff talked about some projects being more executable in the short term than others, because some still are pending regulatory decisions. And so those that have regulatory decisions made, or we can do an interim measure and show a bias for action, those are the ones that we might be able to execute sooner. So that's a good point.
Okay.
Okay, one more question, and that is, there's certain things that we look at in terms of the 17 priorities that we say, well, this is something that the CAB says we can do. However, LANL might say, no, we can't do that. How can we?
So I think, I want to be transparent on this. So we're probably going to do the same thing with the coalition. We're probably talking to the county. Certainly the state of New Mexico enters into the prioritization process, DOE. So this is one of the inputs that we're taking. And that'll be all put together, and then we'd come back as we finalize the priorities under the life cycle baseline to let folks know what they are and how inputs were considered. But there's a host of inputs, and then it's exactly like you said, Bob. So once you get the priorities, you still got we've got to do some sequencing of work with funding, things like that to lay out into a schedule.
What's your time frame for kind of getting to the end point here where you say, okay, here's our set of actions for the next several years. You're going to get input from us, input from other people, input from the state. What are you looking at as kind of the end point of this process where you can say,
End of
okay,
June.
here's what we're going to do
End
now.
of June. The end of June. Yep. So.
Okay. Can we have a copy of, a smaller copy of the 17
Yes, sir.
priorities so that we can study them before we?
So the other thing, that's a great question too. One thing that we were going to do is put all of the 17 campaigns into a brochure or a booklet that you would have 2 or 3 weeks before the May meeting that you could study and look through and things like that. So far I've only got the one developed as kind of a a prototype for this meeting, but our intent would be to publish out or put together the brochure. So it's not like you arrive cold at the meeting. So, if that's of help to you. So,
Steve, do you have another question?
okay, thank you.